5 years after the battle, New Haven had transformed. What started as a desperate collection of refugee ships had become something greater. The structure now had a name that fit its new identity. New Terra. A city of light in the darkness between galaxies. Home to not just humans, but 24 different species who had chosen to build something new together. The construction never stopped. Every day brought new additions. Docking platforms for ships from across the galaxy. Research laboratories where humans and aliens worked side by side. Parks that mixed earth plants with vegetation from a dozen worlds, creating gardens that would have been impossible anywhere else. Schools where children of different species learned together, playing games that mixed human rules with alien traditions. Junho was 21 now. He worked as an engineer, helping design the newest sections of New Terra. The grief of losing his mother never fully left, but time had made it bearable. He wore her old work badge clipped to his uniform, a reminder of what had been sacrificed to build this place. Today he was working with a young Kelnar named Saskith, designing a new residential section that could accommodate both oxygen-breathing and methane-breathing species in the same structure. It was complicated work, requiring dual atmosphere systems and careful safety protocols, but they were figuring it out. "Your people are obsessed with impossible things," Saskith said, his translator turning his clicks and whistles into comprehensible words. "Nothing is ever too difficult." "You just try anyway," Junho smiled. "Is that a compliment or a complaint?" "Both," the Kelnar admitted. "It is exhausting working with humans, but also exciting. We never worked like this before you arrived." In another part of New Terra, Commander Gia sat in a conference room with representatives from the Galactic Council. After 5 years of silence, they had finally requested formal negotiations. The council chamber was smaller this time, just a dozen members instead of the full assembly. And they were coming to New Terra rather than demanding humans come to them. That alone spoke volumes about how things had changed. Council member Velthara was there, looking as ancient and powerful as ever. But next to her were younger members, species that had only recently joined the council. One of them, a crystalline being named Therox, spoke first. "The council wishes to extend a formal invitation for humanity to return to civilized space. You would be granted probationary membership with full privileges after a 10-year observation period." Gia translated this in her head. They wanted humans back under their control but did not want to admit they had been wrong to exile them in the first place. "That is generous," she said carefully. "What prompted this offer?" Another council member, a floating mass of bioluminescent cells, pulsed with embarrassment. "Your broadcast about the Silence Fleet caused significant disruption. Many species now question the Council's decisions. Some have even threatened to leave unless reforms are made. Your return would help stabilize the situation." Gia understood. The Council was not offering reconciliation. They were trying to manage a political crisis. If humanity came back, it would look like the exile had been a temporary measure, rather than attempted extermination. "I will present your offer to our leadership," Gia said, "but I cannot promise we will accept." The meeting ended. As the council representatives left, Velthara lingered. She approached Gia privately, her energy form dimming to something less imposing. "You are going to refuse, are you not?" the ancient being asked. "We have not decided yet," Gia said, "but you will refuse." Velthara made a sound that the translator rendered as a sigh. "I oppose the exile, you know. Not publicly, but in the private councils. I argued that humanity should be integrated slowly, taught our ways, given time to adjust. But I was outvoted." Gia studied the energy being. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know that not all of us wanted to destroy you. Some of us simply wanted to preserve what we had built. 10,000 years of peace, Commander. 10,000 years without major wars, without genocides, without chaos. And then humanity arrived, changing everything in mere decades. Can you understand why that frightened us?" "I can understand fear," Gia said. "But fear is not an excuse for what you did." Velthara dimmed further. "No, it is not. I suppose I wanted to apologize, even if my apology changes nothing." The ancient being left. Gia sat alone for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The trial, the exile, the battle, the deaths. Could any of it be forgiven? That night, the human leadership gathered. Captain Hyun Woo, Admiral Sung Ho, Dr. Taman, Dr. Haywan, and others who had guided humanity through the darkest years. They debated late into the night. We should accept, Jia argued. Integration is the path to lasting peace. We can change the council from within. Sung Ho disagreed strongly. They exiled us once. They will do it again the moment we become inconvenient. We should refuse and maintain our independence. The debate went back and forth. Finally, Dr. Taman raised his hand. I propose a third option. We refuse to rejoin the council, but we offer them something else. A treaty of mutual recognition. They acknowledge New Terra as an independent entity. We agree to open borders for peaceful travel and trade. And we formalize what we have already built here. Hyunwoo leaned forward. You mean turn New Terra into an alternative to the council? Not an alternative. A complement. The council represents order and stability. We represent change and innovation. Both have value. Why not let species choose which path suits them better? The room went quiet as everyone considered this. It was ambitious. It was risky. It was exactly the kind of impossible thing humans were known for attempting. They voted. The decision was unanimous. The next day, Jia delivered humanity's response to the council. We thank you for your invitation, but we must decline. New Terra will remain independent. However, we propose a treaty of mutual recognition and cooperation. We believe the galaxy is better served by having multiple paths forward rather than one singular order. The council representatives were shocked. Several started to argue, but Velthara stopped them. They are right, she said quietly. We tried to force them into our mold and it nearly destroyed them. Perhaps it is time we accepted that our way is not the only way. The treaty negotiations took months, but eventually an agreement was reached. The council recognized New Terra as an independent alliance. Borders would be open for peaceful travel. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely. And most importantly, the truth about the previous 16 exiled species would be revealed, with monuments built to honor their memory. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. New Terra continued to grow. Species that felt constrained by council rules began arriving, asking to join. Not just the dispossessed and exiled, but dreamers, innovators, and explorers who wanted to build something new. Within 10 years, New Terra was home to over 100 different species. The structure itself became legendary. Architects from across the galaxy studied its design. Poets wrote about its beauty. Children learned about it in schools as an example of what cooperation could achieve. Bora rebuilt her gardens, bigger than before. She grew plants from 40 different worlds now, creating ecosystems that had never existed anywhere in nature. Visitors walked through forests where earth oak trees grew next to Kelnar crystal flowers and Thessian luminous vines. Min-Su continued pushing the boundaries of technology. The quantum disruptors that had saved humanity during the battle were now being adapted for peaceful purposes. Engines that could travel farther and faster. Power systems that generated energy without consuming resources. Medical technology that saved lives across species barriers. Daeun, Junho's friend who had detected the Silence Fleet, now ran New Terra's communication network. She maintained contact with vessels across 3 galaxies, coordinating trade, sharing news, and making sure no species was ever isolated the way humanity had been. 20 years after the exile, Captain Hyun-woo was old. His hair was white and his body was tired. But he still walked through New Terra every day, watching what humanity and their allies had built together. One afternoon, he stopped at an observation deck. Beside him stood a young girl no more than 10 years old. She was human, but her clothes were a mix of styles from different species. She wore a Kelnar crystal pendant and Drovian pattern shoes. What did Earth look like? She asked him. Hyunwoo smiled. He had been asked this question many times over the years. I never saw it myself, he admitted. I was born on a colony world, but I am told it was beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. The girl looked out the window at New Terra. Ships from dozens of species came and went. The structure itself glowed with lights from 1,000 different sources. In the distance, construction crews were building yet another expansion. This is better than Earth, the girl said confidently. Hyunwoo laughed. Why do you think so? Because Earth only had humans. This has everyone, the old captain nodded. The girl was right. The council had told humanity to go home. They had meant it as a punishment, a way to make humans disappear into the darkness and be forgotten. Instead, Humanity had built a new home, and they had invited the entire galaxy to join them. Not everyone accepted the invitation. The council space continued as it always had, orderly and stable. But now there was an alternative. The first wave hit like thunder. 10,000 automated warships opened fire simultaneously. Their weapons were efficient and cold. No hesitation, no mercy. Just systematic destruction, the way machines did everything. Human defense platforms took the brunt of the initial assault. Shields flared and died. Metal vaporized. 3 platforms exploded in the first 30 seconds. Alarms screamed across every channel. People died before they could even understand what was happening. But humanity did not break. Admiral Sung Ho watched the tactical display from the horizon's edge. All ships execute pattern Delta. Make them chase you. Waste their ammunition. Do not stay in one place. Human ships scattered. Small fighters darted between the massive automated vessels, drawing fire. Frigates appeared, fired, and jumped away before the enemy could lock on. Nothing moved in predictable patterns. The Silence Fleet's AI tried to calculate trajectories and failed, because humans refused to be predictable. Wu Jin's strategies were working. The enemy fleet had overwhelming firepower, but they were programmed for conventional warfare. Humanity was fighting dirty. Mines appeared where no mines should be. Debris fields suddenly became ambush points. Human ships used the wrecks of their own destroyed vessels as cover. Engineer Min Su activated the first quantum disruptor. The weapon was ugly, cobbled together from progenitor technology and human desperation. It looked like a crystal wrapped in copper wire, mounted on a platform that shook when it fired. But when it fired, entire wings of enemy ships went dark. The automated vessels did not explode. They just stopped. Their AI cores shut down, their weapons went silent, and they drifted helplessly. 300 enemy ships disabled in one shot. "It works," Min Su shouted over the comm. "We need to get the other 2 disruptors into position." But the Silence Fleet adapted. The remaining ships changed formation, spreading out to make themselves harder to target. Their AI might be predictable, but it could still learn. The battle raged for 6 days. Human casualties mounted. Bora's agricultural station was hit by a missile that slipped through the defenses. 15,000 people died instantly. The gardens she had spent 2 years building were gone. All those plants, all that food, turned to ash and frozen fragments. Jun Ho fought from the bridge of a small defense corvette. His job was point defense, shooting down missiles before they could hit larger ships. He was good at it. His reflexes were fast, honed by years of playing zero-gravity games, but he was also terrified. Every time a missile got through, every time he saw another ship explode, he wondered if the next one would be his. On the 4th day, his mother died. She was in the engine room of a frigate when it took a direct hit. The ship survived, but the engine room did not. Jun Ho did not find out until hours later when a message finally reached him. He read it, deleted it, and went back to work. There would be time to grieve later. If there was a later. Dr. Hei Wan worked without sleep, trying to find weaknesses in the Silence Fleet's programming. She had access to progenitor records about previous battles. The automated fleet had destroyed 16 species before humanity. Surely there were patterns, mistakes, something that could be exploited. She found it on the 5th day. The fleet's AI was sophisticated, but it had a limitation. It could not engage multiple species simultaneously without direct council authorization. The programming assumed that exiled species would be alone. But what if they were not alone? Hei Wan brought her findings to Captain Hyun Woo and Commander Ji Ah. "We need help. We need other species to show up and position themselves between us and the Silence Fleet. The AI will not know what to do." Ji Ah shook her head. "No species will risk the Council's anger to help us. We already tried reaching out. Everyone is too afraid." "Then we tell them what we found," Hyun Woo said. "We tell the whole galaxy that the Council is trying to exterminate us. We give them proof from the progenitor archives. Let the Council explain why they are committing genocide." Jia looked at him. "That will make things worse. The Council will never forgive us." Hyun Woo laughed bitterly. "Jia, They sent 10,000 ships to kill us. Things cannot get worse. Send the broadcast. The message went out on every frequency, every channel, every communication system that could reach beyond the void. Gia did not hold back. She showed the progenitor records. She showed the Council's pattern of exile and extermination. She showed the battle happening right now, humanity fighting for survival against an automated murder fleet. And she made it personal. 16 species came before us. 16 civilizations that were erased because they did not fit the Council's perfect order. How many of you knew about this? How many of you suspected? We are fighting and dying out here. But this is not just about humanity. This is about what kind of galaxy we all want to live in. One where different means dead, or one where different means alive. The broadcast reached across light years. It hit Council worlds, independent stations, and merchant vessels. Within hours, it was everywhere. The galaxy was watching humanity's last stand. The Council tried to suppress it, but the message had spread too far. Species that had been silent suddenly had opinions. Debates erupted in Council chambers. Junior members demanded explanations. The normally orderly proceedings descended into chaos. And then, on the 7th day of battle, something unexpected happened. Ships began arriving, not Council ships, independent vessels from species that had stayed quiet during the trial. The Kelnar came with their heavy cruisers. The Drovian sent a sub-fleet of fast attack ships. The Thessian merchants showed up with armed freighters. And others came too. 23 different species, arriving in groups, positioning themselves between the Silence Fleet and New Haven. The automated warships hesitated. Their programming did not account for this. They were authorized to eliminate humans, but attacking other species required Council approval. Approval that was not coming because the Council was too busy arguing amongst themselves. The AI did what it was programmed to do when facing situations outside its parameters. It sent a request for instructions and waited. Admiral Sung Ho saw the opening. All ships, full assault. Hit them while they are confused. Minsu, fire all 3 disruptors. The quantum disruptors fired simultaneously. Waves of energy rippled through space, invisible to the eye but devastating to artificial intelligence. Entire sections of the Silence Fleet went dark. 3,000 ships disabled in moments. The remaining automated vessels tried to retreat. They activated jump drives and began disappearing, heading back toward Council space. Within hours, the sky was empty except for the drifting wrecks of disabled ships and the Allied fleet that had come to humanity's aid. The battle was over. Humanity had survived, but the cost was terrible. 1/3 of New Haven was destroyed. 50,000 people dead. Ships that could never be replaced were gone. Families were shattered. Children were orphans. The gardens were gone. The schools were damaged. The future was uncertain. Sung Ho stood on his bridge and looked at the damage reports. His ship was barely functional. His crew was exhausted. His prosthetic arm would not stop aching. But they were alive. A communication came through. It was a private channel, heavily encrypted. When it was decoded, Velthara's face appeared on the screen. The ancient energy being looked different somehow. Smaller, less sure of herself. Captain Hyunwoo, she said. The Council wishes to discuss terms. Perhaps we were too hasty in our judgment. Hyunwoo looked at her for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew watched in silence. Finally, he spoke. You sent 10,000 ships to kill us. You tried to erase us the way you erased 16 species before us. And now you want to discuss terms? We acted within our authority, Velthara said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, Hyunwoo said quietly. You acted out of fear. You were afraid of what we represent. Change. Progress. The possibility that your perfect order is not so perfect after all. We do not need your permission to exist, Velthara. We proved that. He cut the transmission. Around him, his crew started to cheer, small at first, then louder. It spread through the ship, then to other ships, then across all of New Haven. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had stood against impossible odds and won, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to give up. The silence was broken, and the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years had passed since humanity crossed into the void. New Haven was growing. What started as a desperate collection of ships lashed together had become something more. A city in space built from hundreds of vessels, stations, and platforms. Corridors connected the ships. Gardens grew in pressurized domes. Schools opened. Babies were born. Bora walked through one of those gardens, checking the plants. She had been a terraformer once, turning dead worlds into living ones. Now she grew food in zero gravity, coaxing vegetables and grain to flourish in conditions they were never meant to survive. It was harder work than terraforming had been, but more important. 15 million people needed to eat. The tomatoes are doing well, she said to her assistant. But the wheat is struggling. We need to adjust the light spectrum again. Her assistant nodded and made notes. They had learned so much in 2 years. How to grow food without planets. How to recycle every drop of water. How to make closed systems that could sustain life indefinitely. The council species had this technology, but they had never shared it freely. They wanted other species dependent on them. Humans had figured it out themselves. As usual, in another part of New Haven, Junho was in school. He was 15 years old and had never seen Earth. He was born during the Exodus in the cargo hold of a colony ship, while his mother worked in the engine room keeping the power running. He grew up floating through corridors playing games that worked in zero gravity, learning to read star charts before he learned to read books. He was the new generation. The one who would never know what it was like to live under the council's rules. Today's lesson was history. The teacher, an older woman who remembered Earth, talked about the trial and the exile. Some of the students were angry. Others were sad. Junho just felt confused. He had never understood why the council feared humans so much. We are too fast, the teacher explained. Too eager. Too curious. The council built their civilization on order and slowness. Every species develops at the same pace. Everyone follows the same rules. And then we showed up and broke every pattern they had. One student raised her hand. But is that bad? Why is it wrong to be fast? The teacher smiled sadly. It is not wrong, but it is frightening to those who have been slow for 10,000 years. We reminded them that their way is not the only way. And people who are afraid often do cruel things. After class, Junho met his friend Daun. She was working in the communications center, monitoring the long-range sensors. New Haven had some of the best sensor technology humanity had ever built. They needed to see threats coming from a long way away. Look at this, Daun said, pointing to her screen. We are picking up strange energy readings from Sector 47. They are not natural. Someone built something out there. Junho leaned closer. The readings were definitely artificial. Massive structures old beyond imagining, floating in the void between stars. We should tell someone, he said. Dr. Taemin led the exploration team. He took 3 ships and his best scientists into Sector 47. The journey took 2 weeks. When they arrived, they found something that changed everything. The structures were enormous. They dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Ancient metal and stone, carved with symbols that hurt to look at. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. And at the center of it all, an archive. The archive was still functioning after millions of years. Its systems activated when the human ships approached as if it had been waiting. Data began flowing to their computers faster than they could process it. Dr. Haewan worked day and night to translate the information. The language was difficult, but the mathematics were universal. Slowly, a story emerged. These structures were built by the progenitors, the first species to achieve spaceflight. They had explored the galaxy millions of years before the Council existed, and they had left a warning. Listen to this, Haewan said at the emergency briefing. Everyone important in New Haven was there. Captain Hyun-woo, Commander Jia, Admiral Sung-ho, and dozens of others crowded into the conference room. Haewan activated a hologram. The translated text appeared in the air, glowing softly. To those who find this archive, she read, you have been exiled. You are not the first. Every 50,000 years, a species rises that threatens the established order. The Council does not tolerate such species. They exile them to the void, claiming it is for the good of all. But exile is only the first step. The room went silent. Hyun-woo leaned forward. The first step? What is the second step? Hee-won's hand shook slightly as she changed the hologram. New text appeared. Once the exiled species is far enough from civilized space, the Council sends the Silence Fleet. Automated warships that eliminate the exile entirely. No witnesses. No evidence. Just silence. The Council has done this 16 times. 16 species erased from existence. You are number 17. The room erupted. People shouted questions. Some refused to believe it. Others demanded to know more. Admiral Sung-Ho's voice cut through the chaos. When? Haewon pulled up more data. According to the progenitor records, the fleet usually arrives 3 to 5 years after exile. We have been out here for 2 years, so we have maybe 3 years to prepare, Sung-Ho said. Or maybe less. Wu Jin, the military strategist, stood up. We need to see everything this archive has. Every piece of technology. Every weapon. Every defense. If the Silence Fleet is coming, we need to be ready. The work began immediately. Every scientist, engineer, and researcher in New Haven joined the effort. They stripped the progenitor archives of every useful piece of information. Advanced shield technology, weapon designs, power systems that could generate energy from vacuum fluctuations, material science that made human steel look like paper. Minsu worked with a team to adapt progenitor technology to human ships. It was difficult. The progenitors thought differently than humans. Their technology worked, but understanding why it worked was another matter. Still, they made progress. Bora organized the civilian population. If war was coming, they needed to be ready. Emergency drills. Evacuation procedures. Teaching children how to put on emergency suits. It was grim work, preparing for the possibility that they might all die. Junho volunteered for the Defense Force. His mother tried to stop him, but he refused to back down. I was born during the Exodus, he said. I have never known peace. If there is going to be a fight, I want to help. 3 months after discovering the archive, the long-range sensors detected something. A massive fleet moving through deep space toward New Haven. 10,000 ships, all identical, all moving in perfect formation. No life signs, just machines programmed to destroy. The Silence Fleet had arrived early. Admiral Sung-Ho called an emergency meeting. We have 1 week before they are in weapons range. Are we ready? Minsu answered. The quantum disruptor is ready. It is based on progenitor technology. It should shut down their AI cores without destroying the ships. But we have only built 3 of them. We needed more time. Wu Jin spread tactical maps across the table. We have advantages. They are predictable. Machines follow patterns. We can be unpredictable. Hit and run, guerrilla tactics. Make them waste ammunition on false targets. Jia looked around the room. And if we lose? Hyunwoo met her eyes. Then we lose fighting. The Council thought they could exile us and forget about us. They thought we would disappear quietly. We are going to show them they were wrong. Orders went out across New Haven. Every ship capable of combat was armed. Civilian vessels were moved to the rear, protected by layers of defense stations. Families said goodbye, not knowing if they would see each other again. Junho stood with his unit, checking his equipment one more time. Around him, people who had been farmers, teachers, engineers, and artists now prepared for battle. None of them were professional soldiers, but all of them were ready to fight. Dayun sent one last message to her parents on Earth. They were light years away, safe from the coming battle. But she wanted them to know she loved them, just in case. The Silence Fleet emerged from jump space in perfect formation. No warnings, no demands, just targeting systems locking onto human positions. Hyunwoo stood on his bridge and opened a channel to every human ship. They told us to go home. They said we were too dangerous for their perfect galaxy. They were right to be afraid, because we are not going quietly. This is our home now, and we will defend it. The battle was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the verdict. Admiral Sung-Ho stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the last transports leave the colony world of New Kyoto. The planet below was beautiful. Humans had spent 30 years turning it into a home. They had planted forests, built cities, and raised children who knew no other world. Now it was empty. The cities were dark. The forest would grow wild without anyone to tend them, and those children were crying in the cargo holds of evacuation ships asking why they had to leave. Sung-Ho's prosthetic arm ached. It always did when he was stressed. He had lost the original arm in the border wars fighting pirates in the outer colonies. That seemed like a simple problem now. Pirates you could fight. Pirates you could defeat. But you could not fight the entire Galactic Council. Admiral, His communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission. Unknown origin. It is encrypted with a code I do not recognize." Sung-ho frowned. "Can you decode it?" The officer worked for several minutes. Finally, the message played. The voice was translated by computer, but Sung-ho could hear the clicking and whistling of the Kelnar language underneath. "Human vessels, you are being watched by forces loyal to the Council. They will not attack openly, but they may try to delay or harass you. We are sending you coordinates for safe routes through the neutral zones. Follow them exactly. Do not deviate. We wish you well on your journey. We are sorry we cannot do more." The message ended. Sung-ho looked at his navigation officer. "Did you get those coordinates?" "Yes, sir. They show routes that avoid all major Council patrol zones. If we follow them, we can shave 3 weeks off our journey to the rendezvous point." Sung-ho nodded slowly. Someone was helping them. Someone was risking the Council's anger to make sure humanity escaped safely. He wondered who else disagreed with the exile order, but was too afraid to speak publicly. Over the next weeks, more messages came. The Drovian hive mind uploaded defensive programs that would help human ships detect Council surveillance drones. The Thessian merchants, who had always been friendly with human traders, sent coordinates to hidden supply caches in deep space. Small gestures, but they mattered. Dr. Haewon sat in her quarters surrounded by boxes. 30 years of research, packed away in containers that would probably never be opened again. She had studied 17 different alien species. She had learned their languages, their customs, their biology. She had published papers that were read across the galaxy. She had friends among the aliens, real friends who shared meals and stories. All of that was gone now. Her alien friends had sent her messages before the exile order came down. Most were apologetic. Some were angry on her behalf. But none could stop what was happening. She picked up a small crystal that sat on her desk. It was a gift from a Thessian scholar she had worked with for 5 years. The crystal held holographic images of them together at various conferences and research stations. Happy memories now painful to look at. A knock on her door broke her thoughts. "Come in." Engineer Minsu entered. He was young, barely 25, but brilliant. He had designed the new generation of colony ships that were carrying humanity into exile. Fast, efficient, and capable of long-term deep space travel. "Dr. Haewon, I wanted to thank you," he said. "Your research on Thessian energy conversion helped me design the new power systems for the ARC ships. Without your work, we could not have built ships large enough to carry everyone." Haewon smiled sadly. "I am glad my research will still help our people." "That is something, at least." Minsu nodded. He looked around at the boxes. "Are you bringing all of this?" "Most of it. Some things I left for the university archives. Maybe someday someone will find them useful." She did not say what they both thought. Maybe someday, after humans were forgotten, another species would study her work and learn from it. The young engineer left, and Haewon continued packing. Outside her window, ships were gathering. Hundreds of them. From tiny personal craft to massive colony ships that could hold 50,000 people each. The evacuation fleet was the largest movement of humans in history, and they were not moving toward a new home. They were fleeing into nothing. The crisis came 3 days from the galactic rim. Admiral Sung-ho received an urgent message from one of the slower colony ships. "Admiral, we are being intercepted by a Council enforcement fleet. They say we are moving too slowly. They want to escort us to a detention facility for processing." Sung-ho's jaw tightened. The detention facility was on a Council world. If the ship went there, those humans might never rejoin the Exodus. The Council could hold them indefinitely, claiming they were verifying identities or checking for contraband. "How many ships in the enforcement fleet?" he asked. 6 cruisers and 12 support craft. Against a colony ship with minimal weapons, that was overwhelming force. But Sung-ho had not survived 3 decades in space by accepting bad options. "Tell them we are sending a representative to negotiate," he said. "Buy me 10 minutes. His officers looked at him with concern. What could be done in 10 minutes against an entire fleet? Sung-ho called Minsu. "That experimental jump drive you installed on the horizon's edge. The one you said was too dangerous to use." "How dangerous?" There was a pause. "It could work perfectly, or it could tear our ship apart. The calculations are solid, but we have never tested it at this range. And if we used it to jump the colony ship out of the enforcement fleet's range," another pause, longer this time, If we link our drive to theirs, we could theoretically pull them with us through jump space. But Admiral, the power requirements are massive. We would drain every system we have. And if something goes wrong, both ships could be lost. Sung Ho looked at the tactical display. The colony ship held 12,000 people, families, children, scientists and engineers and farmers, people who had done nothing wrong except be born human. Prepare the jump, he said. Link to the colony ship. Get everyone not essential to the jump off the bridge and into emergency pods. If this fails, I want survivors to tell the story. His bridge crew did not move to the pods. They stayed at their stations, loyal to the end. The jump was like being torn apart and reassembled in the same instant. Light bent in ways light should not bend. Space folded. Reality screamed, and then it was over. The horizon's edge and the colony ship appeared 3 sectors away, exactly where Minsu had calculated. Behind them, the Council enforcement fleet was stranded, their ship's sensors scrambling to figure out what had just happened. Sung Ho's ship was dark. Power was at 5%. Life support was running on emergency batteries. But they were alive, and the colony ship was safe. Get us to the rendezvous point, Sung Ho ordered, and send a message to all ships. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we will not let the Council bully us. We are leaving on our terms, not theirs. A cheer went up from the crew, small, exhausted but defiant. Word spread quickly through the Exodus fleet. The story of how Admiral Sung Ho had outsmarted a Council enforcement fleet without firing a shot became legend. Morale improved. People stopped crying quite so much. They started to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity would survive this. The last human ship crossed the galactic rim 2 weeks later. Behind them lay the bright lights of civilization, the worlds they had called home, the friends they had made. Ahead lay only darkness. Unexplored space. The void between galaxies where no Council species had ever traveled. Captain Hyun-woo stood on his ship's bridge and looked at the star charts. They were leaving known space entirely. Out here there were no rules, no Council patrols, no enforcement fleets. Out here humanity was alone. But they were also free. The chamber was enormous. Lights from 1,000 different worlds filled the darkness above. Captain Hyun-woo stood in the center of a glowing circle that kept him separated from the crowd. His uniform was clean and pressed, but it felt heavy on his shoulders. Beside him stood Commander Jia and Dr. Tae-min. They were the only humans in a room filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some of the aliens floated in the air like clouds of colored gas. Others stood on legs that numbered anywhere from 2 to 12. There were beings made of crystal that hummed with inner light. There were creatures that looked like living metal. And there were things that Hyun-woo could barely understand, shapes that hurt his eyes when he tried to focus on them. This was the Galactic Council. They ruled over 847 different species spread across millions of worlds. And today they were deciding what to do with humanity. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Hyun-woo had watched as species after species came forward to speak against his people. They showed videos of human soldiers in battle. They played recordings of human ships moving through space at speeds that made the other species nervous. They presented reports about how quickly humans learned new technology and how fast human populations grew. None of it seemed like crimes to Hyun-woo. But the Council saw things differently. A massive being of pure energy floated down from the ceiling. This was Velthara, the oldest member of the Council. Her voice filled the room without needing a speaker. It simply appeared inside everyone's mind. We have reviewed all evidence, Velthara said. We have heard testimony from 47 species. We have studied humanity for 112 of your years, and we have reached our decision. Hyun-woo felt Jia tense beside him. Taemin gripped his datapad so hard it creaked. Humanity is dangerous, Velthara continued. Not because you are evil, not because you wish harm to others, but because you cannot help but change everything you touch. You survived a dying world and rebuilt in 2 centuries. You developed faster than light travel in half the time it took most species. You form friendships with aliens after knowing them for days, something that takes other species years. You question everything. You challenge everything. You improve everything. Hyun-woo blinked. That sounded like praise, not condemnation. But Velthara was not finished. The galaxy has an order. Species develop at certain speeds. Technology advances at predictable rates. Alliances form slowly and carefully. This order has kept peace for 10,000 years. Humanity threatens that peace simply by existing. You move too fast. You dream too big. You refuse to accept limitations. Other species see this and begin to wonder why they cannot do the same. Already we have detected unrest in 17 sectors where humans have established colonies. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Clicking, humming, and strange musical notes all blended together in approval of Velthara's words. Therefore, the ancient being said, "We have no choice. Humanity must be removed from civilized space. You will take your ships, your stations, and your colonies. You will travel beyond the galactic rim, into the dark spaces between galaxies. You will not return. You will not contact us. You will not send messages or probes. You are exiled, effective immediately. You have 1 standard year to comply." The glowing circle around Hyunwoo flashed red. The decision was final. Jia stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. "We came in peace. We followed your laws. We shared our discoveries. We helped species who asked for aid. We did everything you required of us. And this is our reward, exile? It is not a punishment," Velthara said. "It is a necessity. Go home, humans. Return to your own space, and never come back." Guards approached. They were not hostile, but they made it clear the humans needed to leave. As they were escorted toward the exit, Hyunwoo looked around the chamber. Most of the council members watched with what looked like satisfaction. But not all of them. A reptilian creature near the back looked away when Hyunwoo's eyes met his. A floating jellyfish-like being seemed to ripple with distress. Several smaller species in the observer section had what looked like tears in their eyes, if eyes were what those organs were. Not everyone agreed with this decision, but no one was willing to speak against it. The walk to their ship felt longer than it should have. The station was beautiful, filled with architecture from 1,000 worlds. Gardens grew in impossible geometries. Water flowed upward in some corridors. Music drifted through the air, composed by beings who heard sounds humans could never imagine. They would never see any of this again. On their ship, Jia sat down heavily and put her face in her hands. Taemin stared out the viewport at the station. Hyunwoo activated the communication system and connected to Earth. The response took several minutes because of the distance. When it came, the president's face filled the screen. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. "We monitored the trial," she said. "The Senate has already begun evacuation procedures. We are contacting all colonies and stations. Captain, how long do we really have?" Hyunwoo looked at his companions before answering. 1 year officially, but I would not count on them being patient. "We should move as fast as we can." The president nodded. "Agreed. Come home, Captain. We have work to do." The screen went dark. Their ship detached from the station and began the long journey back to Earth. Behind them, the great citadel of Nexus Prime grew smaller. Ahead of them lay only darkness and the distant glow of home. Jia finally looked up. "They are afraid of us," she said quietly. "Did you hear it in her voice?" "Velthara is afraid of what we might become." Taemin nodded. "They have built their perfect society. They have their order, their rules, their slow and steady progress. And then we show up, doing in decades what took them centuries. We terrify them." Hyunwoo sat down in the captain's chair. He thought about the aliens who had looked away. The ones who seemed sad. The ones who did not celebrate humanity's exile. "Maybe we do terrify them," he said. "But I think some of them wish they could be terrifying too. Some of them are tired of the order, tired of the rules, tired of being told what is possible and what is not." The ship jumped to faster than light speed. The stars stretched into lines of light. They were going home, but only to pack their things and leave forever. Humanity had 1 year to abandon everything they had built among the stars. 1 year to gather every human in the galaxy and retreat into the darkness. 1 year to decide who they would be when the council was no longer watching. The void between galaxies was waiting. Cold, dark, and unexplored. The council thought they were sending humanity into exile. They had no idea they were setting them free.